Welcome to episode 393 of the DFO Rundown, as always presented by Bet365. Get in the game. You've got NBA Finals on Monday night. Of course, Game 6, where the Panthers could win their second consecutive cup, and the Oilers could lose their second consecutive cup. Get in the game at Bet365. Use the promo code NATION. I'm Jason Gregor. We welcome in Frank Seravalli. Frank, happy belated Father's Day.
Yeah, you too. Hope you had a great one.
You know what? Just relaxing. Watch the son have a little sport event. Went out for a nice dinner. Got some leftovers from the dinner. So sea bass and the sick chicken. Like, man, we ordered lots. So, it's perfect. Yeah, didn't have to cook.
I started my Father's Day with a little case of food poisoning.
Ew,
overnight on Saturday night, it was no bueno.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you eat? Chicken?
No, I had a 16-ounce filet on the bone, and it was really good going down and not so good coming the other way.
Wow.
I don't know what happened, but it was not good.
Not good. Kind of like the starts for the Oilers, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. Now, we're actually this week, we're gonna touch on all the teams in the NHL. Today we'll go in the West, and then on Thursday's pod, we're going to do the East. We're just going to do kind of some off-season rumors. Here we are. We're literally 2 weeks away from the start of free agency. The NHL draft is just over 11 days away, and so there's lots happening. Potential offer sheets, all those stuff, qualifying offers, everything has to get done. Who's going to file for arbitration. So there's lots happening. So today we're going to go in the West. A little, off-season talk, some rumblings, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what we're thinking about for some teams. And we'll start at we'll just kind of work our way up in the standings. We're going to start with the San Jose Sharks, of course, who had 52 points last season. The Sharks got a boatload of cap space, so there's not an issue there. They got over like $41 million for them to spend. What are you hearing on the Sharks, and how big of a player do you think San Jose will be or even should be? Or should they just keep everything dry and just go for short-term deals and keep building a team that's obviously a ways away from winning?
I think they should, and I think they will keep their powder dry. By the way, happy birthday to Macklin Celebrini, who turned 19 over the weekend. June 13 was his birthday, and celebrated at a dinner with his family and Tyler Toffoli, who's kind of like a second dad. And when you look at the impact that Toffoli had on that team this year, the vibes were immaculate in San Jose this year for a team that did so much losing. I don't know that I've ever seen a team that's lost that much have that much fun. Great environment, lots of questions to answer moving forward. And to me, I think one of the big things that stands out is the San Jose Sharks need more defensemen. If you think about if you've listened to the show at any point, I'm always big on positional boxes to be checked. And they've got Askarov in net, who they seem to be a believer in. On the back end, you've got Sam Dickinson, who looks like a really special player. Shakir Mukhamadullin seemed to take some strides, playing almost a half season in the NHL this year. But after those two guys, who's going to be around for the Sharks to play defense? That's a big question. Up front, they seem to be well situated, and Macklin Celebrini has a lot of special qualities and traits that have the Sharks pointed in the right direction, but they need more.
Oh, God. I'm with you on defense, man. That if I'm going to spend and I'm in San Jose, I'd have no problem overpaying a guy for 2 years and just getting a veteran defenseman. It's not like it's going to put them over the top, but it's going to hopefully keep them in games a little bit longer and lower their goals against, right? Like you're not going to win. They gave up the only team in the league to give up over 300 goals, right? Like the Jets gave up 191. The Sharks gave up 315. Like that's the difference from most to least in the NHL, really in the West. So I look at the Sharks. You're right, Frank. They've got to improve there on the back end. And, like they had Wallman and Ceci. They traded them both away. They got some picks and okay, because you're still in rebuild mode. But then you got to go out there and sign some guys to 1 or 2 year deals that can be guys who can play 27 minutes. Don't put your young players in positions to play 22, 23 minutes and just lose all their confidence because they're getting murdered defensively. It doesn't make sense to me.
I'm with you. And by the way, it also looks like the Sharks have a coach. Ryan Warsofsky, great first year at the helm, and then takes Team USA at the Worlds to their first gold medal in 92 years with the youngest roster in the tournament. So I'm with you on a lot of fronts. I think this isn't the year to go out, and it's not to spend, it's not to trade. Try and continue to gather as many assets as possible. And not for nothing, I think Mike Grier has had one of the best last calendar years, or hockey years, if you think about it, from July 1 till now, that no one really talked about. You know, you think about the pieces that he acquired, Granlund, on the back end, CC, Wallman. He was able to take cast-offs from other teams and then trade them for legitimate assets. And when you do that with someone like Wallman and you have a 2026 first-round pick in your arsenal, pretty valuable, particularly that year, to have an extra first-round pick. You know, the Granlund CC trade, you get another one this year. Mike Grier has done some really, really good work.
Well, yeah, I think the key now for the Sharks is with, you know, they got, what do they got? 7 picks in the first 4 rounds, and then they got 6 next year. They don't have a third rounder in 2026, but that's fine. You don't like having that many picks overall isn't the best. You can start to use some of them, but if you are going to trade, you got to make good picks. Having lots of picks is great, but now to me, the pressure turns to the amateur scouts in San Jose. And I could make an argument, Frank, like when we go back and look at the Tampa Bay Lightning and how they were built, Al Murray, he's one of the main architects of that team. Everyone talks about their GMs. I'm like, no. Who drafted Kucherov and Palat, and they hit guys in the first round, but they hit guys in the second and the third and the fourth and all the way to the 7th round. And that's what the Sharks, like, if you're gonna build out that way, you've got to have a great amateur scouting staff. Have to.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And that's going to be the key for the Sharks here moving forward. Do you see them making any sort of big splashes, or they just kind of will look for those veteran 3-4 defensemen who might end up playing more minutes in San Jose on shorter term deals?
I don't even know that they necessarily need them this year.
Yeah, I could be right.
You've got body fillers already. Vinny Desharnais, Timothy Liljegren. Be curious to see if Mario Ferraro ends up being trade fodder this year. Mark-Edward Vlasic is in the last year of his deal. That's 5 guys. You throw Shakir Mukhamadullin in there, that's 6. Sign maybe 1 guy and give you 7, 8. I mean, Mukhamadulin's on a one-way deal next year. Probably indicates that he's going to be playing in the NHL. I don't know. It's not that complicated.
To me, if they was them, I would try to re-sign Jan Ruda. Now, he might not want to go there because he wants to be on a competitive team. I understand it, but there's a veteran guy. He's won a cup. Be a good guy in the room. I think that he can defend, right? Like, he's not going to be a great outlet passer. He's not bad at it, but he can defend and he'll help. And to me, I think, Frank, the most important offseason is finding a right shot defenseman to play with Mukhamadullin. That to me is a key, right? Like, you got Vlasic, you got Ferraro. Like Vinny Desharnais, is he the guy you want being his mentor? Probably not. So I think that's what I would look at, and that's why Jan Ruda makes a lot of sense for me.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's move up next. And the Chicago Blackhawks, Frank, you've talked about it. You think they might take a splash? Do you still believe they might swing big in free agency?
Free agency? No, I don't. I don't think they're going to be out spending crazy money. But I do think that they want to be really active on the trade market, and I do think that the number 3 overall pick is in play.
Really?
Yep.
So they're looking
to get a real difference maker. It's not going to be, we're not going to trade it to just get, a guy to plug in our lineup.
Yeah. Hard though, right? Like, because if you're a team trading that guy, why are you doing it, right? Because you're trading for a number 3 that still could be good, but it's never a lock, right? That's why I always find it hard to trade those.
Yeah, but what about, this is just a pure hypothetical, but what about if you're Buffalo and you've got a situation where JJ Peterka is unhappy and he wants to move on? how else do you become a trade partner?
Yeah, fair point.
I don't think it's like, I don't think Buffalo wants futures, but what team is giving up a legitimate piece off of their roster that makes them worse at the same time?
Yeah. Well,
That's
not
why
many.
I think Buffalo's in such a tough spot.
Oh God, they are. I don't discount, like, it's funny to say that Buffalo's in a tough spot when they missed the playoffs 14 years in a row. And we're like, the tough spot is that they missed 14 years in a row and they're not in a position to really take a step right now. Like, how are they going to improve? Right? They're talking about trading away some of their better players. Like, and we got to get to the East in a bit, but to me, that's stunning.
Yeah,
kind
we'll
of
do the East
situation they're in
on Thursday. But
yeah,
the point being, the Blackhawks are one of the fascinating teams of the summer. They've got tons of cap space. They've got $65 million to spend next summer just to be at the salary cap floor.
Yeah.
They've got a couple really good players. And I think, when you watch the World Championship that Frank Nazar had, you look at the stretch that he had to close out the year.
Yeah.
I mean, he made a lot more progress over the last 18 months than Connor Bedard did. And I'm watching their defense, and I think Alex Vlasic, Sam Rinzel, and Artem Levshunov are the real deal. I think they've got 3 pillars on defense that they're going to have to trade away a couple defensemen probably this summer or at some point during the season to make room for some of the young guys that they have.
Well, Chicago's an interesting one, because if they're going to go with all youth on the back end, it's going to be another tough year.
It is going to be a tough year regardless, I think.
Yeah.
They're not ready to compete. And you could make the argument anyway that maybe 2026 is the year to have another really tough season, because that 2026 draft appears to be very, very special.
Oh yes. Very much so. Very much so. What's your expectations for Bedard next year?
Well, this is a massive summer for him. He is a guy who is obviously supremely talented. I think he needed both a mental and a physical reset. I think and it was pretty wise of him beyond his years to turn down a spot on Team Canada at the Worlds to get that break, because the frustration was so apparent toward the end of the year that it seemed to be a guy who was in his own head, and also a guy who really needed to change things up. His skating stride, some of his mechanics, some of the angles that he attacks in the offensive zone, it worked a lot, obviously at different levels of his career. He's never been challenged like this before. And he has to find different ways to accomplish the same thing. And so I'd also really like to see Bedard become more of a shooter. I think at some point along the way, and I had a one-on-one with him last year on Frankly Speaking. You can go back and listen to it, but he says that he thinks he's a playmaker. And the first thing that I was thinking is like, dude, you have a top 5 shot in the NHL. Use it. And if he gets to a shot first mentality while also placing less of the burden on himself, I think he's going to take off. And I think the expectations are probably reined in a little bit, but that might be healthy for him.
Well, they should be reined in. I never blamed him for these unrealistic expectations that were heaped on him, comparing him to Connor McDavid. I said it many times. It was ridiculous, and it always was. Connor Bedard's going to be a very good player. He's not McDavid. Doesn't have to be, because very few guys can skate like McDavid. Now, Frank, last summer, our next team, everybody was like, oh, they won this summer. They won this summer. And then they finished 14th in the Western Conference. They won 30 of 82 games. The Nashville Predators, I think it's safe to say it was a massive, disappointing season for the Preds. Do they just look and say, hey, we brought in all these guys and it just didn't work out? Maybe we got to be patient rather than try to, do the exact same thing here and trade everybody off. What do you think? Like, Barry Trotz has shown that, he's not necessarily afraid to make moves, but does he need to be more patient this summer?
No, not for me. I think we've got a very clear definition that this team didn't work. And I think outside of Buffalo, there's no more team in a precarious position than the Nashville Predators. I have serious concerns about where they go from here because they're old. If you were to sit back another year and say, okay, well, we'll just play it out and see what happens. Maybe this team rebounds and becomes a playoff team, I guess. But Philip Forsberg, 30, Steven Stamkos, 35, Jonathan Marchessault, 34, Ryan O'Reilly, 34, Colton Sissons, 31. That's your forward group. Roman Josi, 35, Brady Shea, 31, goaltender Jussi Saros, 30.
Yeah. They don't. I was looking like forwards.
Still have Matt Duchene on the books, by the way. $6.5 million this season. Kyle Turris, another 2. That's $8.5 million in dead cap space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the last year of Duchene being a big hit. The next 3 years, he drops down to 1.5. So that's a big savings. They've retained, I think it's 250K on Ekholm for the final year of his deal. So basically they got, $9 million in dead cap space. So that impacts them a little bit, but their forward group, they got to get younger. The only forwards they have under the age of 29 are Fedor Svechkov, Zach LaRue, and then Luke Evangelista. That's it. 3 under the age of 29. So that's where they're going to have to, I think, get younger, no question. But who's got a lot of trade value on their team right now?
I think, and I've reported this on Trade Targets, I think Jonathan Marchessault is open to a deal. I don't think his cap hit is out of whack. I really don't. I just think it's the term to be concerned of. But I think if you were to approach him and say, hey, we want to make a change here, you're one of the contracts that we'd like to offload just because of the situation that we're in. I don't think you're going to get a big pushback from him.
No. And he's 5.5 mil. You're right. I don't think the cap is ridiculously out of whack by any stretch. Now it's 4 years, so maybe the final 2 years could be a little dicey, but I wouldn't be surprised if Marchessault can get you 55 to 60 points the next few years. I don't see it being an issue at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's so, but you said find value. I'm thinking of it from a different perspective, is who's going to cause me the least amount of pain. Marchessault is the first one that comes to mind. Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating what they do there, man. They got to get younger and they got to get quicker. There's no doubt in my mind in Nashville. It's going to be a tough one because unless they hope
centers, they don't have any centers. Ryan O'Reilly is the only guy that they have. That's it. Yeah. And he's 34 and has slowed considerably.
Yeah, like Colton Sissons is a solid bottom 6 center, but you're right. They drastically lack another top 6 center. Like Ryan O'Reilly is at best. He's probably a really good number 3, but
they're an all wing team. I mean, like Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault. If you want to throw Bunting in there, I mean, 3 of your top 4 wingers they're pretty good.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said last year. That's why I didn't pick the Preds to make the playoffs. I'm like, center still matters. And they improved on the wings, but they got worse at center. So they're an interesting one to me, Frank, because they got to hope a lot of their guys just feel more comfortable in year number 2. But I think they're in tough to get back in the playoffs in the Central.
If you're the Preds, you have 3 first-round picks, Vegas and Tampa plus yourself. Are you moving one of those other 2 picks to try and entice a team to take one of your bad contracts?
I'm not there yet, but that's an interesting idea. I don't know if I would go that far.
I think these
like
are
to give up a first just to take off, because what are you going to replace the cap hit with? Right. That to me is the question. I'm getting rid of a guy, but who am I going to replace him with? Is it going to be any better?
Here's my thing. The Preds they're having their new owner officially take over. I think he takes 100% control.
Okay.
If I'm him, I'm looking at this group saying, wait, you want to spend to the cap for a what place team? 28th place team? At some point, it's going to come down to real dollars. I think the Preds are one of those teams, as the cap continues to increase and increase, as popular as they've been, as successful as they've been, at some point when your team has a down year and a string of down years, money's going to become a real problem because you're going to be dumping a boatload of money into a team that has no chance of recouping it all at the box office.
Yeah, it's fair, but those guys aren't afraid to spend money, I would think. If you're buying an NHL team, you better not be cheap. It's not going to work for you. At least I don't think. That leads us to the Seattle Kraken, Frank, who I haven't loved their real plan from day one. I thought they were pretty passive in how they went and approached the expansion draft. And I know that they had that great run and they went to 14 games in the playoffs in their second year and they won a round and everything's exciting, but it's kind of been down to earth. And I look at the Seattle Kraken and I see a team that I don't see, like you talk about a team that they got a lot of older players, right? That's what they got. They got a lot of older players. And I don't know, how do they improve? Like, what are you hearing? And I'm not really hearing anything around Seattle. Are you?
No, it's a great question because Jason Botterill takes over as general manager. And my understanding is that he has complete autonomy to make the decisions that he sees fit. And with that, I think everyone wants to know, what's the thought process? What's the plan? And how does this team get back into contention for a playoff spot? It's been a relatively patient and methodical approach. Some would argue too patient. But I don't know what they do next because they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They're not bad enough to be a lottery team, and they're not good enough to be a playoff team. It's no man's land for an NHL franchise.
Yep.
And there's, to your point, long-term commitments.
Yeah, like Jaden Schwartz, Eberle, and Tolvanen are in the final year of their deal. Same with Jamie Alexiak. So this could be the year, Frank, where I think the biggest splash Seattle makes is going to be at the trade deadline when they're moving guys out.
First call that I'd be making if I'm Jason Botterill is calling Doug Armstrong and saying, hey, do you want Jaden Schwartz back? St. Louis could use him. Scored 26 goals last year. Last year of his deal, $5.5 million. I'm clearing out roster space. I'm giving room and time for young guys. I'm turning over a leaf because I don't want to be next year. We just talked about it. 2026. That's the year. You don't want to be good this year. If you want a true game changer, this is not the year to be good. Start unloading pieces now so that your expectations are readjusted heading into the season. And you put your team in a spot where you're not doing that later on.
Yeah. Because they got some, I'll tell you, man, that Berkeley Catton from Spokane, Seattle fans are going to like him. I wouldn't rush him, but he is going to be a player. I think he's going to be a really good player. And they got some other young prospects in Seattle that you think, Jagger, you know what, like I still, the Furcus Circus, I look at him and you know what? He had a decent year. The American League is really hard, I think, for 20-year-olds, really hard. And he learned a lot to talk to some coaches in the American League, and they felt like they saw good progress for him. And, a little bit of a smaller player. It's a big adjustment in the American League, but he's got some potential. Not saying he's going to be a top 6 guy, but I think he's got potential to be an NHL player. And that's where they need to be patient, is with their young guys. And I would keep their young guys, even if Furcus spends another year in the American League and really boosts his offensive confidence. That's what I would do. That's what they did with Shane Wright, and I think it's paying off. That's the one thing that Seattle, I think, can do well here is go out and find guys on 1-year deals if you want to just, help your team a bit. But I'm keeping my young guys in positions where they can all succeed and play big minutes in the lower levels. They've got Beniers and they've got Wright as young guys up top. Obviously, what's his name? Capo Caco they got from New York. So they've got some younger players, Frank, that can play big roles. They don't need more, at least up front.
They also really like Ryan Winterton as well in Coachella. So one thing that popped up as part of my travels, a lot of Seattle fans are saying, Frank, you're an idiot. How come you didn't have Philip Grubauer on your buyout list? They're not buying him out. And interestingly enough, Philip Grubauer was selected as one of the first 6 for Germany for the Olympics. I don't know what he did and JJ Peterka didn't do, why they decided to name one of the least successful goalies in the NHL over the last few years. But nonetheless, here we are.
Well, we all know Peterka is going to make the team, but you're sometimes you wonder, why they make that move. I'm guessing they're going out of, and by the way, Seider, Stützle, Draisaitl, Sturm, and Reichel were the other ones. But yeah, it is a little surprising to me that Peterka wasn't named amongst their top 6, because I think clearly he's one of their top 6 best players. But it's not going to matter. He's going to be on the team. Who cares who's the top 6?
There's lots of Okay, you could say don't take the bait, but I'm like, has anyone in Germany watched Philip Grubauer in the NHL?
Yeah, I think that's a veteran guy. He gets the nod as respect for the vet. You know how that works, right?
Right, because that's
the
name of the game.
Now, the teams, Frank, that I think, and I know you say, hey, you know what, keep your powder dry, but I think this team is not going to. I don't think they're worried about the draft anymore. They want to be a team that moves up and competes for a playoff spot this year, the Anaheim Ducks. We've seen it. They went out, they got Joe Quenneville. They just acquired Chris Kreider. What do you make of the Ducks, and how competitive do you think they can be this season?
I think they should be knocking on the door of the playoffs this year. They made a 21-point improvement under Greg Cronin, changed coaches. You're already seeing the first impact of Joel Quenneville in Chris Kreider's excitement to play for him. That's a big reason why he signed off on the deal, aside from some of his former teammates, Ryan Strome, Frank Vetrano, Jacob Trouba. There's been a whole host of guys that played in New York that now are playing in Anaheim.
Yeah.
I think they need more. To me, they need more firepower and more goals. That's really where they struggled this year. Kreider will help. I think he's due for a big bounce back season, but I think the Anaheim Ducks are going to be one of the most aggressive teams within reason. What does that mean? Why do you say that? Because there's been lots of reporting out there that says, hey, the Anaheim Ducks are going to offer $14 million a year to Mitch Marner. I can tell you for fact, from good authority, that the Ducks are not offering Mitch Marner 7 years times $14 million. They're not. Are they interested in potentially pursuing Mitch Marner? Are they interested in the conversation? Sure. But they are not. It's not a blank check. And just because their owner, Henry Samueli, who, by the way, has seen his net worth skyrocket. If you want a great business story, go look up Henry Samueli's net worth. It's like quadrupled in the last few years. Just because he says that he misses playoff games and he's told Pat Verbeek that he's ready to write a check and was willing to do so for a head coach doesn't mean that it's just going to happen and snap your fingers, that they're just going to give anyone anything that they want. That's not in Pat Verbeek's plan. And beyond that, look at the rest of their roster. They've got players that they need to pay. Lucas Dostal, he needs a new deal. On the back end, Jackson Lacombe is eligible to sign one starting on July 1st, although I think it's probably going to wait a year or wait at least a bit of time. Leo Carlson's going to need a new deal. Cutter Gauthier going to need a new deal. Mason McTavish needs one now. It sounds funny to say, but oodles of cap space disappears kind of in a hurry sometimes when you start to pay all these guys.
Yeah. No, I actually like Anaheim. I look up and down their lineup, man. I think there's lots. I really like Carlson up front. Troy Terry's a good player. I don't mind Ryan Strome for what he brings to that team. Cutter Gauthier obviously is another really good, promising young guy moving forward. The back end, Jackson Lacombe, he's a player, dude. Like, really good. I like him a lot. They got some other young guys that we'll see how good they'll be, but he's legit. I like Dostal. Now they got their coach. What do you think of Trevor Zegers? We've heard rumblings about him and the Ducks and maybe not on the same page. Do they look and say, hey, let's see what he and Joe Quenneville can do? Or do you think he moves this summer?
He's not on my trade targets board, and he was for a long time. I think the Ducks are loath to trade him while his value is super low, and I don't really see a reason to. He's under contract. He might have been unhappy at times, but this is a different coach and a different start, and I'd really want to see what that looks like before absolutely pulling the trigger.
Okay. Utah. We think they're going to make a big splash, Frank, but let's say, because there's lots of teams, Vegas, Utah, LA, there's, others that are interested in Marner. Let's say they don't get him, right? And obviously the odds would say that there's a better chance they won't get him. What do you think is like the other direction for Utah? Like, they're taking steps, and I know they had some key injuries on the back end. Are they going to think, hey, we're good enough with what we have and we just continue to grow? Or do they got to be ultra aggressive?
I don't know about ultra aggressive. I think the appropriate amount of aggression is important. I think sitting back and thinking, hey, just because we had these injuries, things might have worked out differently. They might have, but I don't know that even if Utah, Mammoth, or last season Utah Hockey Club got into the playoffs, if anyone would have taken them seriously as a threat to do any damage, which at the end of the day is really all that matters. I'm going to say it right now. You can underline it, highlight it, put it in Sharpie, whatever it is you want to say. Utah, Mammoth are making the playoffs next year. And I know it's bold to say that before we even know what they do, but they've got so many picks and so many prospects and so many impact players still on the way that they've got an embarrassment of riches to trade from, that they can be one of the most aggressive teams on the free agent front or on the trade front. And again, it's not just willy-nilly, but I think they need a little bit more grit. They need to be a tougher team to play against is one thing. Two, they're in the market for sure for a backup goalie or someone to play with Karel Vejmelka. And they're going to be a team to watch without a doubt.
You don't think that they feel Connor Ingram can bounce back from 2 years ago?
I just think it's really difficult to rely on him. He was really open again about his struggles with mental health this year, was in the program and spent a bit of time away from the team. Jackson Stauber came in, did an admirable job sort of filling in, and Karel Vejmelka really saved their season and earned his extension. But the other part of this is that they've got a pretty good young prospect on the way in Michael Rabel. And he told the team that he was not signing with them and is going back to school. They really wanted to try and get him to leave school. So they're definitely in the market for someone. And I wonder if they end up trying to move Michael Rabel's rights.
Interesting. All right. Well, because they need some more offense in Utah, and there's no question about that. That's where they got to take a step. And Nick Schmaltz will need a new contract. He can start negotiating it on July 1st, his final year of his deal.
I wonder about Lawson Krause. Like, if there's one guy to pluck off of that team aside from Matthias Michelli, I wonder if Krause would be a guy.
Potentially, but that kind of goes against they need to be harder to play against, right? He's one of their bigger, more aggressive guys.
Bigger, but in my view, not aggressive, and doesn't leverage his size nearly as much as he.
Well, no, that's fair. I'd like to see him hit more. That's totally valid.
13 minutes a night, 12 goals, 18 points. Not living up to the contract right now, that's for sure.
Oh God, no. Now we get to Vancouver, 90-point season, 38 wins. It was the year of drama in Vancouver. Do you think it's in the past now? Can they just focus on the ice? Elias Pettersson's going to stick around. They've got a new coach. They're not going to, there's no alleged feud in the room. At least there shouldn't be anymore. You look at the Canucks and kind of what they're going to do, where they can go. They've made tons of moves. Brock Besser's probably gone. So I think they're going to try to find someone to replace him. But there's not a lot of options, Frank.
So let's go back to your initial question. Is the drama over? My answer is no. There's an ongoing battle behind the scenes right now between the Aquilinis. And it's not over control of the team because we know that Francesco is going to maintain that. But his brother Paolo is leaving the family business, wants out, and his piece is they have to buy him out. So it has been ongoing. It probably won't get settled until I think they're hoping for the start of the season that would make it as drama free as possible. But it has been, I think, certainly intriguing to watch from afar how this is all shaping up. So that's one part of it. Two, I think the Canucks are trying to make some magic happen this summer, but I'll go back to the Jim Rutherford end of season press conference. That was a table setter. That was Jim Rutherford setting the expectations in the market that this team is in for some pain, that they're going to try and make something happen this summer to try and fill that second line center spot that's been vacated behind Elias Pettersson when JT Miller left. Probably not going to be hanging on to Pius Suter. What happens on their back end? Do they have to trade Thatcher Demko, or should they trade Thatcher Demko? They've got a million questions to answer, and my biggest thing is, outside of Jake DeBrusk, who's going to put the puck in the net for you?
Oh, well, hopefully the guy making over 11 sheets is going to start scoring again. Like that to me is where a lot of their season hinges on is, can Elias Pettersson show up? He's making $11.6 million. It's double any other forward on the team. Like he wanted the contract, then you got to do something, man. You can't have the season he had again last year. It's completely unacceptable.
That's why it's a massive summer for him, because by all accounts, I think the Canucks are leaning toward not moving him before that no trade clause kicks in. But man, if he has full control and he has another season like he did last year, I don't know what you do. And that contract, it's not really able to be bought out based on signing bonus.
Oh God, no. It's just started. Like it hasn't even started yet.
It sounds ludicrous to even say, but he has $47 million in signing bonus, 35 of it still remaining. I don't know what they like. If he has another year like that, I don't know what they do.
Yeah. Like he has got, what has he got? 7 years left on that deal.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, you gotta, that's going to be the whole key for Vancouver. We know Quinn Hughes is going to show up and play well. Demko's health is another question mark for sure. Can he be healthy? Can he stay healthy? That will obviously impact them. But they're to me,
here's
Frank,
my thing. Here's my thing with Pettersson. He strikes me as a guy watching from afar that doesn't love hockey. You know, there's some guys that play and they earn a living because they're really good at it. He hasn't had any joy in his game in a long time. And this summer for me, watching him is going to be all about, does he get it back again? Because if not, I don't think any of the rest of it's possible. You can't get by on just being supremely talented without working hard in conjunction. And usually the hard work comes from the passion and the joy of the game.
That's fair. The other thing I've talked to a few, and they say he gets incredibly hard on himself to the point where it's unproductive. And you know, you got to, hey, dude, like you're not going to have every period, every game's going to be great. And so I don't know, Frank, if you talk about it sometime, hey, everybody wants the big money, the big contracts, but there's lots of pressure to go with it. And if you can't put the right healthy amount of pressure, but also relief on yourself internally, it's going to be very difficult to succeed. So they can do everything they want. They can surround them. They've taken out JT Miller, maybe, too hard personality, blah, blah, whatever excuse you want to use. It's out the window now. It's got the whole summer. His GM even said, guy's got to be in better shape, right? He said it. So everybody knows the issue here. So come to camp, put in the work, be a professional. because he's got the skill. I don't think anybody debates the skill level. Like his release is one of the best in the league, skates well, all that stuff. Don't have a problem with that. But what you do in the off season is really what separates most. Like the best players, no shock, are the hardest workers. It's not like they're just taking the summer off, lollygag, and then show up at camp and have this great amount of skill. Like they hone their skill in the off season. And when your GM says that you need to work harder, you can't have a bigger red flag for me.
I agree, but I think it stems back to the exact premise that I was saying. You don't really want to work hard if you don't love it.
Well, God. Yeah, well, he loved it enough to sign a deal and get all the money. So hopefully he loves it enough to
I hope I'm wrong, by the way. Like he's so supremely talented. Like no one is rooting for him to fail. It's just that the expectations are real and the excuses are out the window now.
Yeah, it's true. Now, our last team that did not make the playoffs in the West, the Calgary Flames, obviously came the closest. The Flames had 96 points, lost due to one less regulation win than the St. Louis Blues, and that had them out of the playoffs. I think they exceeded expectations last year. You know, Wolf had a pretty good season overall. They've got Devin Cooley. You got if Cooley's their backup, I don't mind that at all, actually, if they want to stick with him. The big question here is going to be Rasmus Andersson. 4.5 mil. He's entering the last year of his deal, Frank. And to me, if he doesn't have a contract right away, then obviously I don't think he's going to get one. So then it comes down to how much you want to pay him, and do you just trade him? Because up at nearing the trade deadline, this guy might have infinite amount of value.
So late last week, the two sides were scheduled to exchange their first volleys on what an extension might look like. And that was going to set the tone and tenor for this summer for Anderson. I didn't get a report back yet on how that went, but I think the Flames were bracing for impact, thinking that he's probably going to be more expensive than they wanted him to be, which for him, you get one shot at this. So shoot your shot in free agency a year from now. That said, I think you're right that I think his value is going to be equal or better at the deadline than it is right now. The problem with that, the only problem potentially is if your team, let's say you make some other additions. So the Flames, they've been calling around on young players. They've called about JJ Peterka. They're calling about any center that's young-ish and on the market. They're into it. They want to try and bring those players in. They desperately need goals. But let's say Dustin Wolf, just operating on pure hypothetical, he has an even better season next year than this one, which is pretty damn good. And I know goaltending is fickle, but you need to play out the game with me, game theory. If he has a slightly better season than this year, and he's pulling your team closer to the playoffs, the last thing you want to do is get yourself into a position where you say, man, we agreed that we're going to trade Anderson, but we can't cut the legs off of our team now before making the playoffs. So you have to go in, if you don't trade him this summer, with very clear expectations of we're moving him no matter what, because that's best long-term for the Calgary Flames, which is why it might be easier to do it now so that it, A, opens up more space for your young players to step in if you want. And the Flames have some pretty talented defensemen on the way. Or B, that you also quiet a lot of the noise. Remember how big of a headache the first 6 to 8 months of Craig Conroy's tenure were, dealing with Lindholm and all these guys, Zadorov, that ended up being on the move and getting out of there. It was a headache for them because it was a constant talking point all season long. So I think there's, obviously two different ways to do this, but operating under the assumption that Anderson's going to want too much money for too long, then they've got a choice to make.
Yeah, well, I will say because first of all, his cap hit isn't that high. So you know what? Calgary retains half of it at the deadline. Like you could easily make that deal work for a lot of teams to get him in. Probably. Yeah, even if you had to get a third party broker, makes it even less then. So because he's a really good player, and teams, Frank. Because the other thing is that the teams competing, there's always going to be a few surprises. So you get into it, and now the teams are competing. And if somebody gets injured and loses a defenseman, like look at Seth Jones, and all of a sudden, because of the Matthew Tkachuk injury, well, now you go and get Seth Jones in Florida because you have the cap space to do it, right? So I think it and Anderson's probably maybe even more appealing at times because he wasn't such a high cap. So I think Calgary will probably rest. What do you think? How do they approach it? Like, they're a 96-point team. So, some would say they overachieved, but some might say, hey, this is who we are now. We're a hardworking, competitive team. And with a break or two, maybe we can get in next year. What do you think the Flames do? Because I think they have a business model when their new arena's built, they want to be competitive.
Yeah, I think look how aggressive they were last year to try and improve. They make a significant trade with the Flyers for Frost and Farabee. They're going to be making similar type moves, I think, to bring in players in that age scheme that fit. Farabee's 25. Frost is in need of a new contract. He's 26 as an RFA. By the way, what do you do this summer with Connor Zary coming off of 2 knee injury scares, who also needs a new deal? They went long-term with Matt Coronado, which is a big deal for them. I think the Flames have some really intriguing pieces. That is a team that punched above its weight class last year, that riding a hot goalie and their goalie of the future and the present. I think the Flames can make it. I really do.
All right. So that's our West non-playoff teams. We'll do the East non-playoff teams, and then we'll do the playoff teams the following week. We'll bring in Tyler Remchuk, and then we'll get to Game 6. Ty, how you doing?
I'm doing good, boys. Ready to roll. New edition of Fill in the Blank is brought to you by Bet365, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Game props, totals, player props, money line. They got it all at Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary with Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. This is one thing. Frank and I had a very, very brief conversation about it the other day at the end of one of our shows, but the expansion rumblings are going around, the news in Atlanta. So let me ask you guys, there will be blank number of teams in the NHL by the year 2030. Frank, 5 years from now.
34, and it's going to be Atlanta and Arizona.
So you think by 5 years it could go up 2? They won't do maybe 3 years or 4 years from now it goes to 33, then it takes a little bit after to get to 34. You think there might be some urgency?
No, I think you're going to be at 33 for a bit, and then you're going to go to 34 whenever that new arena gets built in Arizona and they go back there.
Yeah. 2 teams makes most sense. One in each conference makes the most sense. And 5-year plan. I don't think the NHL has to be in a position here, because we can make a strong argument that they don't need to expand from a talent pool wise. They're expanding because of a money wise, so they'll do it. But any more than 2 would be foolishness for me. So 5 years, it's really 26. So are we talking the end, the start 30-31 or to end 29-30?
Start 20-30-31. So
okay. So yeah, then I would go with 4. Because if it's 29-30, it might still only be 3.
All right. Let's go to another one here. A little Stanley Cup final. I do have 2 Sam Bennett questions here, but he has rocketed to the top of the Conn Smythe odds board. He leapfrogged Sergei Bobrovsky earlier on in this series, and now he is a minus 200 favorite to win the Conn Smythe. So let me ask you guys, if the Panthers were to win in 6, Sam Bennett has a blank % chance of winning the Conn Smythe, Greg's.
Pretty high. He's got 15 goals. The only guy with more in the cap era is Hyman with 16 last year. He's physical, scored some big goals. And I know Marchand scored a lot of goals in this final, but so is Sam Bennett, right? He only has 1 fewer goal. So I'm going to say he would have, unless somebody has an out of this world game in Game 6, I'm going to say he has an 81% chance.
81, Frank.
81% for Bennett?
Yeah.
I am wrestling with my ballot. I'll say that. I'd say for me, right now, you could flip a coin for the first spot between Bennett and Marchand. And I think the weight of the Stanley Cup final and scoring 5 goals already and being hugely instrumental to the wins that Florida's had, I know that Bennett's been a machine all playoffs long. I know what he's done on the road. The recency, I don't even want to call it bias because the final just means so much more. I'm having a hard time putting Bennett ahead of him right now.
But they each have 6 points. Like Marchand has 6 goals in 5 games and Bennett has 5 in 5.
Okay. But
there's a clutch factor though, isn't there? Like those Marchand goals have been huge. And like every goal obviously means a lot, but like the OT winner and then the performance in game 5, does that not push you a bit more to Marchand? He's plus 450, by the way.
it does for me.
Yeah. Bennett plays more minutes. So yeah, it's close, but to me, it's not just the final. It's the whole thing encompassing. And like, if he scores a goal, we're talking the most goals we've seen in 20 years in one playoff year for Sam Bennett. So I think it'd still be hard. And the other wild card is like Bobrovsky's numbers are pretty good, right? But Florida's just scoring so many goals right now. And I understand it. So it takes a lot of pressure. Like they haven't needed Bobrovsky to win a lot of games 2-1 and 3-2, right? Like the Panthers are on pace here for some of the most goals we've ever seen in the NHL, like scoring 5 goals all the time. Like NHL PR is putting out after every game, most consecutive games with 5 goals, which is, and we'll get into it afterwards, but everybody talks about the Oilers' offensive depth. Give me a break. If they can't limit goals here, they're done.
Yeah.
I
just think it's a lot closer than anyone might want to say that it is.
Yeah. Well, I do think the people get into the great stories, and Brad Marchand, 37 years of age, funny guy in the media, makes fun of himself compared to Sam Bennett, who looks like a ruthless assassin, serial killer on the ice. Off the ice, he's got his ball cap on. He's super stoic, and people are like, yeah, but Brad Marchand's a nice guy. Like, it's funny that Brad Marchand is like nice, and I'm not saying he's being a nice guy, but I do think that will play into it a little bit.
They pretty much have the same number of points.
Yeah. But one guy has way more goals. One guy's more, like, when you look at like physical play, right? Like Sam Bennett is rock guys, goaltenders, but he's rock some big players. Like, you're right. The point totals are there, but the goal totals is a pretty big deal, right? So
just looking at the Oilers odds here, they're plus 280. And I'm using these numbers for the math simplicity of it. If you were to put $200 on the Oilers to win, you would return $760. But if you were to just go bet on the Conn Smythe, McDavid is plus 700 and Draisaitl is plus 750. $100 on McDavid returns 800. $100 on Draisaitl returns 850. So you're actually better off, I think, just betting on Connor and Leon each to win the Conn Smythe, because even though you're going to lose one of them, the payout's better than just putting 200 on the Oilers, because there's no world where, like, if the Oilers win games 6 and 7, it's not still going to Sam Bennett, right? Like, it would go to an Oiler if they win.
Oh, yeah. This isn't going to be like last year where the losing team has the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. I don't see how. Like, and I'm surprised
that's because last year the Panthers were so evenly distributed that it was to their own detriment.
And McDavid set an NHL record for most assists in a playoff year and had 40, only third player ever to have 42 points. But I think, like, your odds have McDavid favored over Draisaitl. If I was voting today for Edmonton,
I wouldn't.
Draisaitl's the guy for sure. He set like most overtime goals in a playoff year record, most overtime points in a playoff year record. Like, to me, it's Draisaitl for sure for Edmonton.
By the way, one additional stat: Marchand has 3 game winners. Bennett has 1. Not, again, 15 goals is 15 goals, but he's got 10 and 3 of them are game winners. Yeah. I think it's very close. I really do.
Well, it's funny about his last game winner, because if Corey Perry doesn't score that kind of garbage goal, then it's Sam Bennett who has a game winner.
All right. Last
beauty of the game-winning goal pool for writers.
Yes.
Is that changes.
Oh, I know. Jim Matheson was rattled because he had it. He had Bennett, and then Perry scored and he lost it.
I took home the pot from game 1 with Draisaitl.
Yeah.
OT.
I am also, there's a little thing where, like, writers put in $20 and then you pick a random name out. I am on an all-time cold streak in that. I got to play it 3 times during the Four Nations Faceoff. I got Shea Theodore the game he got hurt. I got Urho Vakanainen in one game and Nico Mikkola one game. And I got to play it once in the Cup final, Dmitry Kulikov.
That's all right. Last game I got Jonah Gadjevich.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a tough one too. Last one I got for you guys, just on Sam Bennett. I mean, there's been so much discussion over the last 6 weeks, like, $10 million. Is he just going to go to the highest bidder? What about just staying in Florida? There's a blank % chance that Bennett just stays a Panther, Frank.
I think there's a 75 to 80% chance that he stays
Agreed.
a Panther just based on math. Let's say they offer him 8 times 7.5. To beat 8 times 7.5 with the taxes and the 8th year, you have to start at 9.5 times 7.5 times 7. It's going to be really hard to beat whatever they're offering. So I think it just makes sense to stay.
Oh, and I love Sam Bennett as a player here, but I love Biz, but come on, like him pushing 10 million is pure fallacy.
Absolutely insane.
Like it's based on nothing sane. And he's doing it so then he can follow up. But see, Florida got him. That's why they have this great no state tax, and it's a benefit. I used the Nazem Kadri comparable when he won a cup with Colorado, then was a free agent. He had 87 points that year. He's a point a game player in the playoffs, or right below. I think he had 15 and 16. They didn't play many games. And guess what? He signed for $7 million. So if you prorate that just on percentage of the cap, and he's an 87-point player, has always been more productive in the regular season. That's $8.1 million prorated to today's cap. So that's kind of like the max deal. And that, like, Sam Bennett scored 50 points once in his career. And I love Sam Bennett as a player. He'd play my team any day. But Sam Bennett is a $7 to $7.5 million player. And if he signs in Florida, he's getting a good savings. But it's not like the Panthers are getting a great take-home value. They're getting fair market value for what he should be. $10 million has never been realistic. Biz, we love you, but I'm sorry. That is no one's signing him for $10 million. He scored 50 points once. No one's doing it.
All right, boys, that is a wrap on Fill in the Blank. I'm going to give you guys, it was an unreal sports weekend for breaking news. You had the Devers trade out of nowhere. Ohtani's returning to the mound. The U.S. Open was electric. Nothing bigger than this, though. Joey Chestnut's 1-year ban at the Nathan Famous hot dog eating contest has been lifted. He will be eating dogs on the 4th of July. That's significant. Bet365, no over-under yet, but I'll keep you posted.
I might beat the over myself personally. I can't wait to break out the hot dog roller that I have.
All right.
Yeah,
That's
it's like the worst, quote, sporting event in the world. God, I hate it.
I watch it if Chestnut's there. All right, that's a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank.
Yeah, like you couldn't pay me to watch that. Why would I watch someone just stuff their mouth with hot dogs? I don't get it. Like I truly don't get it. Because to get good at it, you got to practice it all the time. I want to see someone good at jump shots, home runs, pitching, anything. Eating hot dogs, like,
dude,
I don't get the fascination.
To do it and not puke is such a skill.
Oh, yeah, but why though? It's just, I don't know. It epitomizes the gluttony of North America, sadly. Like, there's a reason why U.S. and Canada's not far behind when it comes to.
So why are some of the best competitive eaters Japanese?
Beats me.
Okay.
They don't win.
Of course they do. Kobayashi?
Did he beat Chestnut, though? Doesn't Chestnut have all the records?
Kobayashi's won plenty of times.
Yeah, but who has all the records?
I don't know. I don't care enough to know. I just like watching.
Come on, buddy. But let's be honest. It is kind of a gross thing to watch.
Kobayashi is a 6-time Nathan's hot dog eating contest champion and has popularized.
How many times is Chestnut?
Sport. I don't know. Let me see.
Has he ever beat him?
Joey Chestnut has won. He has the record. He lost. Joey Chestnut lost to Kobayashi in 2005 and 6. Kobayashi won, or Chestnut won 8 consecutive titles from 2007 to 14.
Head to head. God, been
Lost
doing it for 20
twice.
years. Jeez. Yeah. He's like the Brad Marchand and Corey Perry of hot dog eating contests.
Joey Chestnut is a 16-time champion.
Yeah. Good for him. Hey, you found something you're great at. Awesome. But no interest from this cat.
It's not Wing Bowl.
That's a
uniquely Philly reference, by the way. Have you ever watched Wing Bowl?
No.
Well, we don't do it anymore because, well, frankly, it just got out of hand. But because the Eagles were never playing in the Super Bowl, the week between the Super Bowl, the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl, that quiet weekend, Friday morning was all out debauchery. They would sell out Wells Fargo Center where the Flyers play to watch people eat hot wings with, I'd say, scantily clad or women not wearing any clothing scattered throughout the building, and it's legendary. One of the best days of the year on the Philly sports calendar.
But it doesn't happen anymore because now the Eagles are competitive.
Yeah, they retired it. They said once the Eagles won the Super Bowl, no more Wing Bowl.
Oh, wow. There's probably some people disappointed the Eagles won.
The inventor of Wing Bowl, the guy who gets credit for Wing Bowl, is Hockey Hall of Fame journalist Al Morganti.
No.
Is his idea.
Oh, man, there should be some other markets out there that could come up with a Wing Bowl of their own and make it work. Because
they used to have to keep the hockey glass up to keep the crazed fans from like impacting the actual events.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
On the floor, on the surface.
Leafs Nation could come up with something like that. It's been a while since they won a cup, so who knows? Now, speaking of a cup, it'll be in the building, of course, on Tuesday night in Florida. The Panthers looking to go back-to-back. The Oilers trying to avoid being the 78 Bruins, the last team to lose consecutive Stanley Cup finals. To me, Frank, this series boils down to two very simple things. The Oilers are playing from behind way too often, and the first period is terrible. They've taken too many penalties. They've been shorthanded. They've allowed 2 goals in every period, and actually 3 in another one. There was one game where they actually led 3-2 after the first, but they lost that game in overtime, game 2. The most consecutive time Edmonton has ever led is just over 50 minutes at any point in the entire series. Like the lead, playing with the lead number is so grossly in favor of Florida. A, because they led from start to finish, basically outside of 56 seconds in game 3. And then last game, it was for 50 minutes and 48 seconds. Like Edmonton their first periods are killing them, Frank. You can't play catch up all the time against Florida. I know they've done it twice. So they're like, hey, we're the first road team in game 4 to come from down 3-0. We're the first team this year in like 3 years under Paul Maurice to come from behind in the second period, yada, yada, yada. It ain't happening again, I don't believe, if they can't get their act together to start the game.
It's not a recipe for success. And I'll add in a third element because you're bang on with the first two, and it's goaltending. It's just a fact. The goaltending has been a key differentiator in this series between the Oilers and Panthers.
Oh, yeah, Bob's a better goalie. There's no question.
Way better. And I think the Oilers have to go back to Skinner for game 6.
Agreed.
But it's part of, for teams that are very close without much separating them, that's one area where there's big separation.
Well, Edmonton, it doesn't help when you were shorthanded, 13 times in the first period alone, right? Like you look at how many power play goals they gave up. It's awful. And so if your goalie isn't elite, now you're putting a lot of extra stress. You're asking people to do more than they're capable of doing. So right? Like in the previous series, they like Skinner had shutouts. He just had to be solid, right? Make a few key saves, sure, but their discipline has to be way better. And I think Edmonton's like, they're going to need Connor McDavid here to show up in Florida. Like it's a harsh truth though, that in Florida, he's had one game with 4 points. Last year, game 5 was unreal, but the other games he has 1 assist, right? Like they scored 4 5-on-5 goals in game 4, which is unreal for them. And McDavid wasn't on the ice for any of them. Good for the team. But to me, this will be one where you need McDavid to be a big difference maker. And it's hard because you're going against Barkov, you're going against Reinhart, you're going against Forsling, but that's just kind of goes with the territory. Best got to beat the best sometimes. They
need a Mark Messier type game 6 to send it back to Edmonton. And look, you're a stat guy, so you'll appreciate these two things that I've thought about. The worst penalty kill percentage to win the cup recently is Vegas in 2023 at 71.7.
Yep.
The Oilers are south of that. The last team to win a cup with a goals against average north of 3 in the playoffs, you have to go all the way back to the 1992 Pittsburgh Penguins. The Oilers are north of that. They need to buck 2 serious trends in order to win. That they do it in spite of their penalty kill and in spite of their goaltending. it's just a tall task. I'm not saying it's impossible. Think back to Sidney Crosby. He lost to the Red Wings in 2008, 2009. They trailed 3-2. And they also, their game 7 was on the road. Look, it's doable. Win one game and you're back at level ground and have the momentum, you would think, on home ice. But they've got a lot of history standing in their way.
Oh yeah. No, they there's lots of elements of their game that have to improve. Like, it's no surprise your penalty kill is bad, your goaltending numbers are going to be bad. It kind of goes hand in hand, right? They say your best penalty killer has to be a goalie. Some of the looks though they've given up on the penalty kill have just been atrocious. So it's got to start there. Be more disciplined. I thought they were actually more disciplined in game 5, right? They only took one penalty in the first period and didn't give up a goal. So I guess that's progress for them. But to me, it's the small details. Like last game, they win 2 faceoffs, Frank, and Florida seconds later, has control of the puck and scores, right? So small details. Is
that not just compete?
Yes.
Like how does someone out muscle you and then skate by you?
Not focused, right? Like, you're not focused on. To me, that's It's funny that people faceoffs don't matter. Every play, every shift matters in the Stanley Cup final. For those if you let that guy jump inside you off a faceoff that your center iceman just won cleanly, and now he gets a puck and not you, boom. And we saw like Brad Marchand, great play by Marchand, don't get me wrong. But Podkolzin and Ekholm, that play shouldn't happen, right? From kind of a nothing play at center ice in the middle of a period, not after a goal, anything. So those were 2 big areas the coach talked about, Knobloch. And I agree with you that they go back to Skinner, but they're going to need a big effort from McDavid, and their penalty kill is probably going to have their best effort of the postseason. And I know it's been hard because they haven't been able to do it, but they're going to have to find a way to win a low scoring game here.
Mm-hmm. But low scoring means keeping Florida off the board.
Yeah. Well, you got to, and maybe get out front.
They haven't successfully done that in any one game yet.
No. Well, get out front and force Florida to maybe have to open it up a bit and press for a goal, and then you can counter, right? Yeah. That's how they beat Dallas and Vegas. They were in front all the time. And so they've been playing so much from behind that it's not conducive to winning for this team. And that, to me, I think the first period is going to go a long way to telling the success of that game. Mm-hmm. So you've been calling game 7 though, from the get-go. Do you still think it'll be a game 7?
I do.
Ooh, all right. Well, there you go. We'll do the 8 teams in the East on Thursday. Maybe we'll be talking about a game 7 on Friday, or we'll be talking about the offseason and everything else. We'll also get into some of the more player awards. We don't have time for that today, but we'll get into that probably before the end of the month. That's the rundown. Frank Seravalli, Jason Gregor, as always, Tyler Yaremchuk, brought to you by Bet365. Get in the game. Have fun. We'll talk to you Thursday.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.